In a world where thinking became heresy, lucidity has become an act of courage. No, it's not an exaggeration. It's a diagnosis. We're living in an age where the human mind has been hijacked, not by weapons or regimes, but by addictions, distractions, and a silent avalanche of garbage. Digital garbage, emotional garbage, intellectual garbage, an invisible clutter that piles up in the deepest layers of our collective consciousness. We're immersed in a culture that glorifies the shallow and despises the deep, where noise is more valued than thought, where truth is shaped by algorithms, not by reason. People don't think anymore, they just react. They don't live, they consume, connected all the time, but disconnected from themselves. The mind, what should be our fortress, our most powerful tool, is in ruins. And the worst part, most people have gotten used to the collapse. Decay has been normalized, accepted, applauded. They call filth self-expression. They call ignorance identity. They call decadence freedom. We are, without exaggeration, living in the age of mental filth. And if you don't see what's happening, if you don't wake up now, you'll be dragged down with it, without even realizing it. This isn't just another war. This isn't an economic crisis. It's a silent epidemic, invisible, but devastating. It starts in the mind, and it rots everything around it. We're surrounded by hyperactive, yet empty minds, plugged into the network, but completely unplugged from their own souls. People spending hours scrolling, consuming junk, laughing at nonsense, worshipping hollow figures, cheering for clowns, celebrating irrelevance. It's a deep, sneaky, collective collapse. What was meant to be our shield has become our cage. The mind is numb, drugged by useless stimuli, flooded with fabricated distractions, all to keep the soul asleep. Today, thinking is offensive, silence is uncomfortable, reflection is outdated, nothing can be deep. Everything has to be fast, easy, and predigested. What goes viral isn't what frees, it's what degrades. And the scariest part, people are cheering for it. They're consuming their own decay with pleasure. It's become entertainment. We live in the era of whatever. It's just a trend, just a joke. But it's not just that. These little things are shaping a culture, and rotten culture creates rotten people. And you know what's worse? Many think it's beautiful. They call it authenticity. They call it freedom. But they're being conditioned. They're being trained, like domesticated animals, to think less and obey more. Yes, there are still the lucid ones, the awake, those who look around and feel a knot in their stomach. People who think, who resist, who see what's really going on behind the curtain. But they are few. Silent minorities surrounded by blind, numbed crowds, satisfied with their own ignorance. We are witnessing the death of intelligence, the collapse of consciousness, the triumph of distraction. Stupidity today parades around dressed as authenticity. Vulgarity has become content. Ignorance has turned into opinion, and all of it is consumed as if it were culture. But it's not culture, it's conditioning. People who dare to think deeply are labeled as boring, arrogant, complicated. Because critical thinking requires effort, it requires silence, it requires stillness. And in this age of constant noise, thinking has become an almost revolutionary act. South Korean philosopher Byung-Chul Han once warned, "We live in a time when the excess of positivity and stimulation destroys the soul." Burnout, anxiety, depression, these are not just personal issues. They are symptoms of a system that drains the human spirit and still manages to convince us that this is what success looks like. The modern mind is exhausted, but not from thinking, it's exhausted from running away from itself. And the worst part, most people don't even notice. They're too busy with notifications, TikTok dances, memes, and empty slogans. A generation with a melted brain and an inflated ego, capable of repeating catchy phrases, but unable to hold a real thought for 5 minutes. Schopenhauer once said, "The fate of mankind depends on the level of discernment it can develop." But discernment is on life support. Wisdom has been traded for likes, awareness for validation. We are moving backwards in mental evolution, and very few have the courage to say it out loud. But if you've made it this far, if that inner discomfort still lives within you, if something inside still resists this silent decay, then maybe, just maybe, you're part of the minority that can still be saved. And who knows, maybe even help rescue others. Because today, in the middle of the noise, the chaos, the garbage, thinking is an act of rebellion, and waking up is a revolution. If this really is true, and all signs point that way, then we are dangerously close to total collapse, but not a financial one. Something far worse, a collapse of the mind, of consciousness, of the soul. We are raising a generation trained for servitude, but a sweet kind of servitude, wrapped in filters, playlists, likes, and heavy doses of digital dopamine. A generation taught to obey with a smile, to never question, to follow orders with pride, hate those who think differently, and get offended by everything, except their own mediocrity. We live in a time where everyone demands respect, but no one wants to become respectable. Everybody wants to be heard, but almost no one has anything truly meaningful to say. They crave freedom yet don't even understand what it actually means. As Zygmunt Bauman once said, we live in liquid times. Nothing is made to last. Not relationships, not ideas, not convictions. Everything's disposable, even consciousness. And yet, even in this age of disintegration, there are still those who see, people who refuse to surrender, people who'd rather embrace the silence of thought than the loudness of collective stupidity, people who swim against the current of shallow culture, who won't bow down to the mental filth that's become the norm. They're few, they're doubted, they're called weirdos, or boring, or crazy. But believe me, they're the last spark of sanity in a world that's proud of its own disorder. And if you feel like you're awake in a world that's asleep, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. The mind has collapsed. The masses are rotting and clapping as they fall. But if there's still a trace of restlessness inside you, if there's still a spark of revolt against this culture of trash, then resist, think, learn, be quiet, rebuild. Because in the middle of all this mental pollution, thinking is the cleanest act you can commit. And listen, I'll be honest with you, there are days I seriously ask myself why I even bothered doing this. I spend hours writing, reading, recording, trying to wake up the few who still have a flicker of clarity left, but it feels like this generation's drowning in mud and worse. They like the smell. Everyone's hooked on shallow content, dumb dances, pointless lip syncs, fake lifestyles, forced smiles while their brains slowly melt and mold from the inside out. And when someone dares to offer something deeper, more real, more human, here come the digital zombies in the comments saying, "Oh, but you're using technology too. You want views just like everyone else. You're on YouTube too. Really? You actually want to compare how I use this space with how you use it? I'm here because this is where people are. Because maybe, just maybe, there's still someone on the other side of this screen who wakes up, who hears this and says, you're right, I'm becoming a numb nobody, I need to change. And you, what are you doing that's useful, other than spending your days consuming junk, laughing at dumb memes, and living in a bubble where thinking has become a crime? This generation doesn't want truth. It wants distraction. It wants dopamine. It wants approval. And when someone dares to leave the line, refuses to play the clown, they get ridiculed for daring to think. It's a generation offended by everything except their own mediocrity. But I'm not here to be nice. I'm here because I refuse to be just another one of them. Because I still believe it's possible to wake up the ones who have the courage to face the mirror. So if you came here just to criticize, to throw sarcasm around, do yourself a favor. Take a good look at your own life first. What have you been building? What have you actually changed? Have you helped anyone? Woken anyone up? Or are you just like so many others laughing while the ship sinks? If that's you, go ahead, leave, disappear. Because while you're out here drowning in digital arrogance, there are people fighting to save what little is left of awareness in this numb world. But if you're still here, if you've listened this far, then you're not part of the collective filth. And you are the one I want to talk to now. For real. No anger, no sarcasm. Just respect, because I know how much it hurts to be someone who sees in a world that insists on keeping its eyes shut. I know the weight of watching mediocrity spread, of watching depth become a joke, of watching thought die in front of a screen. But there's something in you that won't accept that. Something inside you still wants more. You don't just want to survive, you want to live consciously. You want to understand. You want to grow. You want to break out of this toxic cycle of mindless distraction. And just for that to already rare, you might not feel special. You might think you're still far from where you want to be. But the simple fact that you're searching, that you're listening, that you're reflecting already puts you on another level. You're not part of the crowd that wakes up, consumes, complains, and falls back asleep. You want more and not more stuff. You want more truth, more clarity, more direction. While most people live through the eyes of others, you're trying to reconnect with yourself. While the majority chases likes, you're chasing meaning. And I get it, it's not easy. It's lonely. It's exhausting to be the one who feels too much, thinks too much, tries to stay sane in a world that celebrates insanity. You look around, and it feels like everyone's numb, laughing, dancing, posting, smiling at a camera, while on the inside, everything feels empty. It's like the world has fallen into a collective trance, and there you are, in silence, watching, trying to figure out, at what point did we lose ourselves like this? But listen closely. Even if everything around you says otherwise, you are not alone. Even if the algorithms keep trying to shove garbage into your brain, even if it feels like no one cares about what's deep, what's real, there are still people like you out there. Are they few? Yes, scattered definitely, but they exist, and they're precious. They're the ones who still believe life is more than dopamine, who still value silence, thought, and truth. People who don't sell out for likes, who don't bend just to please, who won't play the clown just to fit in. They are the ones who carry the spark of change, because real transformation never starts with crowds. It always starts with the conscious few. The greatest movements in history, the ideas that shattered entire eras, the revolutions that changed everything, they all started with just a few, with the ones who dared to think while everyone else just followed, with those who refused to obey blindly, even when it came at a cost. And if you're here right now, reading this, feeling that discomfort, that restlessness you just can't shake, know this, that's not weakness, that's strength. In a world where everyone's rushing, you stop. In a world where everyone wants to be seen, you want to understand. In a world full of noise and distraction, you think, and that puts you on another level. But it also gives you a responsibility, because knowing that's just the first step. Doing that's the daily challenge. You'll be surrounded. A wave of nonsense will try to reach you every single day. It'll try to distract you, numb you, pull you back into the collective sleep. But you're not part of the crowd. You are consciousness, and consciousness can't be outsourced. Look, I could be out here making shallow videos, selling Instagram, motivation, catchy one-liners, viral junk food for the mind. It'd be easier. I'd get more views, more likes, more claps, but it would be a lie. And I refuse to lie just to please. I refuse to pretend everything's fine when everything's screaming for change. That's why I write. That's why I film, edit, repeat, day after day. Because I still believe there are people who haven't given in. People like you, clear-minded in the middle of all this confusion. And even if we're a minority, this minority carries torches. We can light the way for others. We can be a spark in the dark. We can be an anchor in a sea of superficiality. You don't have to change the whole world, but if you start with yourself, you're already doing more than 99% out there. Keep reading, keep observing, keep searching for what's real, even when it hurts. Keep questioning what's too easy, too fast, too popular, and keep thinking. Because today, thinking is an act of rebellion. And if at some point, someone calls you different, too intense, too weird, too cold, too deep, take it as a compliment, because in this world, being normal has become a sign of being lost. Thank you for being here. Thank you for thinking. Thank you for not being just another one. This channel exists because of you, not because of numbers, not because of the algorithm, but because of you, the one who still values awareness,